What we're going to do here today is talk about a version of luxury which doesn't really exclude people.
The notion of luxury that Genesis has is basically a holistic experience design.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. An extremely warm welcome here to Midori House. This is the London editorial hub of Monocle, and we're delighted to be co-hosting a series of events with Genesis. This is number 2 of 3, and we're here to talk about a rather elusive subject today. We're here to talk about the idea of luxury. But before we do that, I'll introduce myself. My name's Josh Fennett. I'm the deputy editor of Monocle. I've worked here for around 10 years, writing about quality of life, luxury, and all associated things from urbanism to hospitality. And my colleague, Sophie Grove, is here to help.
Hello, Sophie Grove. Lovely to be here tonight. I'm editor of Confect. I've worked for Monocle for many years too, but a year ago we decided to launch a new title, a quarterly, aimed at women. And there's a sort of lifestyle that is luxurious, but it's also very human and connected to nature. So Confect has given us an opportunity to redefine our approach to that word as well.
And I think what we're going to do here today is talk about a version of luxury which doesn't really exclude people, which isn't something that's just expensive for its own sake, but it's something that's meaningful, that has tactility. And I'd like to come to our panel. We have Lee Broom, an entrepreneur and a great product designer. We have Sagra Maceria Rosen, who is a luxury analyst and a great commentator for Monocle 24, and Eric Gallina from Genesis, who deals in the world of design also. But Lee, I'm going to come to you first. What have you learned as a man that designs luxury products and runs a business which supplies these luxury products to a changing customer, let's say?
Yeah, I think it just emphasizes in a way what has been happening over the past 10 years anyway, and it feels like it just sped up a bit quicker. That as a brand and as a luxury brand and as a designer, you have to constantly keep your eyes open to what people expect from what luxury is and what it isn't. Now, I design furniture and lighting products, and for us, since the very beginning, it's always been about the materiality of the product. It's always been about the narrative behind the pieces as well, the story that you have to tell as a designer, how it was made, where it originates from. And that has become more and more important, I think, over the years, as opposed to a sort of outward display of wealth within a product. And so for us, it's about the origins of the materials and the craft aspect, and also to a certain extent, the experience of our customers as well, how that sort of develops with the brand.
Eric, I'm going to bring you in here because you're a representative of Genesis in a way, but also a former journalist, someone who's very clued into the world of luxury. How does the brand think about it?
The notion of luxury that Genesis has is basically a holistic experience design. It's from the very inception of the product. From the outset of purchasing a vehicle, as soon as you do, unlike other car buying experiences, you actually have somebody that follows you through the entire ownership experience of that vehicle. I want to have that experience, and for Genesis, I think the luxury experience, again, is whether you're going on a long trip or a short one, is the comfort, the intuitive nature of the product, the way that it caters to you, and the way that it makes you feel ultimately. So it's performance, of course, but it's also about the performance in terms of how it makes the end user feel from a coddled, cared for, nurtured perspective, I suppose.
Lee, I wanted to ask you, because you're talking about materiality and this sense of tactility, but also longevity, as Eric said, in your products. And I wondered how much you've seen a shift maybe in the mindset of your customers. Do they want to have the luxury of knowing the provenance of the materials you're using, be it marble or wool or wood?
Quite a lot of them do, some of them don't. But what, moreover, everybody does want is uniqueness. And that can be very difficult to inject in products which we design. They form part of a collection and then they are sold. And that idea of the kind of, I guess, the classic product, the sort of Italian classic from the 60s, 70s, is becoming a little bit more redundant. And a lot of our clients, when we release something, the minute we release something, they say, right, do you have it a bit longer? Can I have it wider? Can I have it in a different finish? Can I have it in a different colorway? And so as I've been designing, particularly over the past few years, I'm creating products as much as I can that designers, architects, clients can customize themselves. So the way in which they hang the products, there's a multitude of ways creating different constellations that they can use it. So the designer or the client can put their own stamp on the product, particularly interior designers who are working with clients. You know, they want to give them something that nobody else has.
From editing Confect, it's really a pan-European magazine, and we even see the difference in perception of luxury and what's premium as you go from country to country in Europe and cross borders. But there does seem to also be a sense that people are buying beautiful things for themselves, not to show anyone or project or represent themselves at all. The luxury experience is very interior and almost kind of secret. There's something sort of integral about the way people are consuming their luxury goods that is perhaps shifted in the last few years.
We are a little bit in a moment of change. Yes, of course, there is cultural differences and country differences, and yet we think about everyone that is in this room, we pretty much probably all know each other, plus minus 2 degrees of separation. So there is a kind of global citizen of the world, which is an important thing. Now, in the last few years, we've also started to see the counter trend. Every big trend always has a counter trend, and those more, actually from even a political point of view, the more nationalistic feelings are coming up. I don't want to be political, but in Europe, a lot of things are happening. There is much more about the kind of culture of the place and appreciating that, it's a little bit of a pushback against that globalism, right? So I think that that will translate into our kind of daily lives and into the way that brands, luxury and otherwise, operate, and it taps into this very important trend in the world, which is like what you were saying, personalization, customization. It all comes together.
We were talking at the previous event in Munich about what a luxury experience might be to a Monocle reader. And it's very rare that when we do speak to Monocle subscribers, they say, my passion is buying expensive things and showing them to people. Very often it's a hobby or renovating an old bike that has no cash value, but it represents time to yourself to rethink, time away from your phone. So when we were thinking about this talk as well, we thought about luxury as the absence of things. You can pay a lot of money to go to a resort that puts your phone in a fish tank for a week while you drink mojitos. And that's a very funny world, isn't it, where the absence of something can be a luxury. But another thing we were talking about earlier, Lee, was Sagra mentioned, was it your daughter, that was looking for a dress, didn't want to buy something new because her values were against that. She didn't want to be wasteful, and wanted to find something vintage. What is the luxury value of the one-off?
Well, I think that a lot of people now, and particularly the younger generation, are really buying into the idea of having vintage rather than new, because they want something new and they want something that's unique. They want to have something that has a bit of heritage to it.
And that's not perfect.
No, exactly. Or it might be that they are searching for that absolutely perfect teak credenza and it can't have one mark on it, and they will pay good money for it and they'll probably keep it for the rest of their lives. And I think that's the change. But I think the whole thing that the past 2 years has sort of taught us is that luxury is relative as well. And I think that people's idea of luxury is changing, and especially as people were coming out of the pandemic, to sort of go and see your friends in the park for the first time was a luxury. To go for a picnic was a luxury. To see your parents was a luxury. Going to the cinema was a luxury. So it kind of really changed the perception of what luxury is for me and for a lot of other people. It doesn't have the monetary attachment to it that you would normally associate with luxury, I think.
I do think it's interesting that we're on quite dangerous ground here, so I'll pick my words carefully. Luxury is exclusive by its very nature, but it doesn't have to be exclusionary. And I think that's quite an important point. And on how you price Genesis, on how you take away and pay respect for people's time, because you've thought very, I think, generously about that and about price points. How does that work for Genesis, Eric, this idea that cost isn't everything?
Everything is standard, basically. There's very few items on the options list. So if you want high levels of technology, if you want, premium leather, all of that, it's not ticking an option box and watching the cost of the product rise significantly. So from that perspective, where it's baked in, right? It is what, and there is no haggling. You just go to the store, or you order the vehicle, and you have your personal assistant come and drive it, or wherever you may happen to be, and deliver it to you. So from that perspective, it's very much everything is there for you. We're really looking to elevate that not only perceived value, but the actual, content value of the product.
When I first looked at Genesis, so I was like, okay, Genesis, no brand, never heard. Look at it, it's like, oh, well, these are very good-looking cars. And then, of course, I expected it to be much more expensive. I mean, than I found out to be. And there is something quite wonderful about that as well. When you have that shock in the wrong, in the right direction as opposed to in the wrong direction. So that's something that is like, oh wow. I mean, that's kind of interesting that the experience and the perception that I had of the brand then came with a price tag that was like, surprised me positively, because I'm usually surprised on the other side of things. It's like, oh, I love that. It's like, oh my God, it's like 150,000 something.
That's the whole thing that we're looking to do here is you don't have to sacrifice, being unique. You don't need to sacrifice quality. You don't need to make any sort of sacrifice to have a luxury product.
Especially relative to the kind of look and feel and experience.
If you go to a luxury hotel, for example, perhaps it's hard to get to, it's expensive, so therefore it's exclusive as well, yeah? So, but ultimately it's the experience that you have while you're there. When, the bellboy greets you or whatever, front desk, right? When the guy, the doorman opens the door to the taxi and greets you in. It's that entire line into the experience of being at that hotel. So Genesis is very much the same way. It's that initial impression, right? And then ultimately when you go, it's that first handshake, touching the door handle, going and sitting inside, feeling the leather around you, feeling the materials, seeing the colorways. And so it's that experience that just draws you in. It's not necessarily exclusive from that perspective, but it does elevate you in terms of how it is that you feel. I started looking at what the values are of my friends that are Korean. And they're extremely generous. The hospitality is unparalleled, the loyalty. So to me, I interpreted those human traits into what the brand is about. And now if you take those three traits, just three, you can weave that into what a luxury feel is from a Korean perspective. Our approach to customer experience and the way that we really are there throughout their entire journey to be there for them.
I just want to say a huge thank you to Sophie Grove, to Eric, to Sagra, to Lee, and to all of you. And I hope the conversation continues this evening. And thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a real luxury.